The execution of William Wallace. The death of William Wallace on August 23, 1305, remains one of the most brutal and infamous executions of the medieval period. Wallace, a Scottish knight and key leader in the wars of Scottish independence, had become a symbol of resistance against English rule. His capture, trial, and gruesome execution were meant as a chilling warning to anyone who dared challenge King Edward I of England. Before his capture, Wallace spent years battling English forces across Scotland. He played a central role in pivotal battles, rallying Scots to the cause of freedom. But in August 1305, near Glasgow, Wallace was betrayed by Sir John de Menteith, a fellow Scot loyal to the English crown. Wallace was captured, chained, and taken to London, where he was paraded as a traitor through the streets. His trial took place in Westminster Hall. Charged with treason, Wallace argued passionately that he could not be a traitor to King Edward because he had never sworn loyalty to him. But the outcome of the trial was predetermined. His fate had already been sealed. Wallace was condemned to one of the most excruciating deaths imaginable. He would be hanged, drawn, and quartered, a punishment reserved for the highest form of treason. On the day of his execution, Wallace was stripped naked, tied to a horse, and dragged for miles through the filthy streets of London. This public humiliation was meant to break him before the real suffering even began. When he arrived at Smithfield, the site of his execution, his body was already battered. But the worst was yet to come. First, he was hanged, but not until death. He was cut down still alive, gasping for air, only to face further horrors. Wallace was castrated, his genitals burned before his eyes, symbolically stripping him of his legacy. Then, his abdomen was sliced open, and his intestines were slowly pulled from his body, likely while he remained conscious. His organs were burned in front of him. Only after enduring this unimaginable torture was he finally beheaded. His head was mounted on a pike and displayed on London Bridge. But the punishment didn't end there. Wallace's limbs were cut from his torso and sent to various cities, Newcastle, Berwick, Stirling, and Perth, as a grim warning to other Scots. Despite King Edward's attempt to erase Wallace from history, the execution had the opposite effect. Instead of crushing Scottish resistance, it inspired it. Wallace became a martyr, and his sacrifice fueled the fight for Scottish independence. Less than a decade later, the Scots, led by Robert the Bruce, won a decisive victory at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, a key step towards securing freedom from English rule. Today, William Wallace is remembered not as a traitor, but as a symbol of Scottish bravery and national pride. The execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. The beheading of Mary, Queen of Scots, on February 8, 1587, stands as one of history's most notorious executions, not just for the political intrigue surrounding it, but for the botched and gruesome nature of the event itself. Mary had once been queen of both Scotland and France, but by the time of her death, she had spent nearly 20 years imprisoned in England. Caught in the tangled web of political and religious conflict, she became the focus of Catholic plots against Queen Elizabeth I. Mary's troubles began long before her final days. As a Catholic queen in a Protestant-dominated Scotland, she faced fierce opposition. In 1567, she was forced to abdicate in favor of her infant son, James VI. After a failed attempt to reclaim her throne, she fled to England in 1568, hoping for protection from her cousin, Queen Elizabeth. But instead of finding refuge, Mary found herself locked away. Elizabeth viewed her as a threat, a legitimate rival for the English throne. For nearly 2 decades, Mary was a prisoner. Her presence in England stirred conspiracies among Catholics who saw her as the rightful queen. The most serious of these was the Babington Plot of 1586, a plan to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the throne. Letters between Mary and the plotters were intercepted, providing what Elizabeth's advisors claimed was undeniable proof of treason. Despite Mary's insistence that she was innocent, she was tried and sentenced to death. On the morning of February 8, 1587, Mary was led to the Great Hall of Fotheringhay Castle. She approached the execution block with grace, removing her outer garments to reveal a crimson petticoat, the color of Catholic martyrdom. Her ladies-in-waiting wept, But Mary remained composed, even joking with the executioner about the cold. Refusing a Protestant prayer, she chose instead to pray in Latin, reaffirming her Catholic faith. She then knelt, carefully positioning her head on the block. What followed was a tragic spectacle. The executioner, Richard Bull, was an experienced headsman, but his first strike missed the neck and struck the back of Mary's head. Blood sprayed across the scaffold. Mary groaned but did not cry out. The second blow still failed to complete the task. It wasn't until the third strike that her head was finally severed. But the horror wasn't over. As the executioner lifted Mary's head to display it to the crowd, her wig slipped off, and her head tumbled to the ground, revealing that she had been wearing the wig to conceal her thinning hair. Adding to the somber scene, Mary's small dog, hidden beneath her skirts throughout the execution, emerged and refused to leave her side. Mary's death eliminated a Catholic threat to Elizabeth's rule, but had serious consequences. Her execution enraged Catholic Europe and helped prompt King Philip II of Spain to launch the Spanish Armada the following year. Her son, James VI of Scotland, quietly harbored resentment, but did not retaliate. Ironically, after Elizabeth's death in 1603, James would become King of England, uniting the crowns of Scotland and England. Today, Mary, Queen of Scots, is remembered as a tragic figure, a queen caught in the deadly crossfire of religious and political conflict. Her legacy endures as both a martyr and a cautionary tale. The execution of Giles Corey. The death of Giles Corey on September 19, 1692, during the Salem Witch Trials, stands out as one of the most unusual and agonizing executions in American history. Unlike the others accused of witchcraft who were hanged on Gallows Hill, Corey met a far crueler fate. He was pressed to death under heavy stones. Giles Corey was a prosperous farmer in Salem Village, Massachusetts. Prior to the witch trials, he had already faced legal trouble, accused of beating a farmhand to death but escaping harsh punishment. By 1692, Corey was over 80 years old. His wife, Martha Corey, was known for her skepticism about the witch trials. When she openly mocked the accusations of witchcraft, she quickly became a target and was arrested in March of that year. At first, Giles wasn't sure what to believe, but eventually he defended his wife. That's when he too came under suspicion. In April 1692, Corey was accused of being a wizard, someone who used supernatural powers to harm others. Like many of the accused, he was brought before the chaotic and biased court in Salem. But Corey refused to play by the court's rules. He refused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. Under English law at the time, a trial couldn't proceed unless the accused entered a plea. But there was a sinister workaround. Authorities could use peine forte et dure, a form of torture involving pressing the accused with heavy stones until they either agreed to plead or died. Corey knew the stakes. If he entered a plea and was found guilty, his property would be seized by the court, leaving his children with nothing. By refusing to plead, he ensured that his estate would pass to his heirs. On September 17, 1692, Corey was taken to a field near Salem jail. A wooden board was placed over his chest, and officials began piling heavy stones on top. Sheriff George Corwin and others urged him to confess, but Corey's response was defiant and legendary. More weight. For 2 grueling days, the stones kept coming. The pressure crushed his chest, making it nearly impossible to breathe. Witnesses said his tongue protruded from his mouth, and the sheriff reportedly used his cane to push it back in. Despite the agony, Corey never gave in. On September 19th, he finally succumbed to his injuries. His last words were, again, more weight. Giles Corey's execution remains the only instance of death by pressing in American history. His refusal to plead exposed the absurdity and cruelty of the Salem Witch Trials, helping to turn public opinion against the proceedings. His death, along with that of his wife Martha, who was hanged 3 days later, contributed to the growing outcry that eventually brought the trials to an end. By early 1693, the hysteria had faded. In 1711, the Massachusetts government formally exonerated many of the accused and provided some compensation to their families. But the damage had already been done. Today, Giles Corey is remembered as a symbol of resistance, a man who chose death over injustice, leaving behind a legacy of defiance in the face of tyranny. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave and like and comment what you would like the next video to be about.